folks, it's apparent that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doesn't watch the Eyes Open Network. This is the leader of Canada, and this completely alarming video that I just watched trumped everything else that I was thinking about doing today, because it's just time for people to open up their eyes and wake up. You know, we've done 2 stories on the Eyes Open Network that has reference to the Trojan horse theory with Muslim refugees, most specifically Syrian refugees, landing in free countries and these refugees containing ISIS militants. I just don't understand how this continues to be a completely lost possibility. I say I don't understand, but part of me clearly does, because, you know, politically speaking, bringing in a pile of refugees and treating them wonderfully can really back your voting numbers, right? But it is so dangerous. But here's the kicker with Mr. Trudeau. He is going to be, and has ordered, military personnel to leave their homes on military bases to turn them into refugee camps. Unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, this is, you know, in addition to, if you haven't heard, you know, he also announced yesterday that he will be pulling any and all fighter jets out of the fight with ISIS. I guess redirecting the monies to turning military bases into refugee camps. I don't know. So the Canadian military's job in the next little while is going to be to play host to Syrian migrants. Watch the video, hear it for yourself. This is a video from Rebel Media. I didn't even bother trying to splice it up or touch it or anything. I just, in its entirety, here it is.
Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the Liberal government will pull our Canadian CF-18 fighter jets out of the Allied coalition and end combat against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. We're abandoning our own Canadian values, and we're abandoning our coalition allies. So what are the new plans for our Canadian military? Well, I have them right here in my hands. They're plans that the Liberals ordered the Department of National Defense to draft to house more than 6,000 Muslim migrants on Canadian military bases, turning them into long-term refugee camps. To Trudeau, our soldiers should not be fighting Muslim terrorists over in Syria. He wants Muslims from Syria to be brought here to live on our Canadian Armed Forces bases, which will be turned into Muslim migrant hotels, kicking out Canadian forces from their own barracks and giving their beds to Muslim migrants. Canadian soldiers were warned back in November that they could be evicted from their barracks. Now we have the details. The plan to move 6,000 Muslim migrants onto Canadian military bases covers 7 facilities, 2 bases in Quebec, CFB Valcartier in Montreal, and 5 bases in Ontario, CFB Trenton, Petawawa, Borden, Meaford, and Kingston. These plans call for the migrants to stay for 6 months at a time before the next wave comes. And the cost to the Department of National Defense alone is budgeted at $100 million for each 6-month period. That's what Trudeau wants to spend our military budget on instead of fighting terrorists. These planning documents obtained by the rebel through access to information laws show the migrants will be split evenly. 3,110 migrants on Quebec bases and 3,150 in Ontario. As you can see, the Quebec budget document is more specific than the Ontario one, and I'll explain that in a moment. Take CFB Valcartier. The Liberals plan to house 3,000 Muslim migrants there, which will be quite a feat. They'll have to kick out most of the soldiers and cadets at one of Canada's largest bases. The estimated cost for food alone will be $16 million, possibly more given the extra cost of halal food. And for accommodations, another $7.9 million, even though Canadian soldiers are being kicked out. Throw in another $2 million for winterization, $60,000 for extra garbage collection, and another $250,000 set aside to clean up the mess after each wave of refugees comes and goes. And then there's $162,000 for shuttle buses on the base, another $162,000 to drive the Muslim migrants to and from treatment centers, whatever those are. More than $5 million is budgeted for Arabic language interpreters. Remember, these migrants don't speak English or French. They have few job skills. Many are illiterate. And then there's millions more dollars budgeted, including for these migrants' well-being. I won't go through it all, but you can see on this first page alone, it's a $36 million budget for just 6 months. The second page of the Quebec budget has millions more than $1.6 million for medical costs, $720,000 for security. I mean, imagine putting poorly vetted Muslim migrants from terrorist central in Syria right in the heart of our Canadian military bases. It's crazy. There's $559,000 just for bottled water. So just for the Quebec side, the total is more than $46 million for 6 months. And look at their notes on the bottom left of that page. They're clear that these costs do not cover health care. Just as an aside, I can't help thinking, I bet there are a lot of homeless Canadian citizens who wish they could get free housing, food, chauffeurs, recreation, the works. This budget, which is a partial budget, works out to $31,000 per year for every man, woman, and child. And these families typically have 4 or 5 kids, so each Muslim migrant family will get the equivalent of $200,000 a year under this scheme, not including welfare or Medicare. Why can't we treat our Canadian homeless like that? Why can't we treat our Canadian military veterans like that? Now, the Ontario budget does not have that kind of specificity, but given the numbers of Muslim migrants are almost identical, we can assume the budget in Ontario would be similar. So we're looking at close to $100 million between the two provinces every 6 months. It is shocking that our military personnel would be taken away off an actual combat mission to be brought home to work as social workers, hoteliers, concierges, chauffeurs, and cooks for Muslim migrants to Canada. It's shameful that Canadian soldiers would be ordered to wait hand and foot on non-Canadians who just evicted those same soldiers from their own homes. It's a disgrace that the Trudeau Liberals no longer believe the purpose of a military base is to be a military base. But here's what's the most shocking. I told you that the Ontario budget documents were less comprehensive than the Quebec ones. And it's because of what our access to information requests specified. We asked for the cost of religious and cultural accommodations for Muslim migrants. Quebec gave us all those other details too, which is fascinating. But all we actually asked was how much Canadian taxpayers' money will be spent on religious items for these Syrian Muslims. The answer will shock you. Let's go back to the Quebec plans. You see, I skipped over one line item on the French language budget. Religion, soutien religieux. That means religious support. Religious support? Yeah, $216,000 in Quebec alone. You can see there are emails back and forth about buying Korans and Muslim prayer rugs for hundreds or thousands of migrants. They talk about buying 100 Bibles too, which is sort of cute, given that the Liberals have specifically said they're not going to choose Christian Arabs fleeing the Islamic State.
Whether a Liberal government would prioritize ethnic and religious minorities?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, they'll just be Muslim migrants, but paying for Korans and paying for Muslim prayer mats is just a rounding error compared to building mosques themselves. That's right. Canadian taxpayers are literally paying to build mosques on our military bases. Here's the Ontario budget for the military camp at Meaford, Ontario. 75 grand for the worship center to be built and $6,600 for the Muslim prayer mats for the 500 refugees who will be brought there. But look at the budget for CFB Borden. They've got plans for 1,500 Muslim migrants, so 3 times as many. So more than $21,000 for prayer mats alone. But whoops, they forgot to add in the cost of their mosque, which presumably would be 3 times as much as the smaller one in Meaford. So just under $250,000 for that government-paid mosque. CFB Petawawa, Trenton, and Kingston all have budgets for thousands and thousands of dollars for Muslim prayer mats too, as you can see. But strangely, only CFB Trenton remembered to budget for Qurans, $7,500. They don't even pretend that any Christians will be coming needing Bibles. I'm not sure why Qurans and mosques aren't in all the Ontario forces-based budgets. I'm going to guess because this is the Canadian military. It's not the UN's refugee agency or a Canadian social services agency or some mosque. This is the Canadian military. These people planning these refugee camps weren't recruited and trained and experienced to be submissive little infidels. They never thought they were signing up to wash the feet of Muslim migrants. Seriously, look at the Valcartier memo. $53,000 worth of washcloths and wipes needed for foot baths before Muslim prayer time. I didn't see that in the last Canadian Forces recruiting video, did you? This is what Trudeau has done to our military. He has stopped it from fighting Muslim terrorists, and he has turned it into a squalid hotel for Muslim migrants. He has notified Canadian citizens who have volunteered to serve our country. He has notified them that they will be evicted from their homes on our military bases, and those homes will be turned into refugee camps. And those bases will now have mosques and Qurans and prayer rugs in them. How do you feel about this? I'm guessing you feel shock, that you don't believe these plans are even real. Oh, yes, they are. You can read them for yourself on the website right underneath this video. What do you want to do about this? I know what I want to do. I want to stop it. I want to push pause on all this craziness, this mad rush by the Trudeau Liberals to bring in 50,000 unvetted Muslim migrants to Canada every year. It's crazy. It needs to stop. And if you agree with me, visit www.refugeepause.ca. I'm Ezra Levant.